So then in the last class, we were discussing about sensitivity and complement sensitivity, right? We had considered a block diagram like this. This was our K. This was our plant, right? We considered disturbance. This was the output. This was the reference input. We considered a unity gain feedback. This was the noise, and here, this is the output. Okay, and we came to know, we had found that our output Y of S was complement sensitivity T into what? T into R of S minus N of S, the noise, plus sensitivity S of S into D of S, disturbance. Okay, and error signal E of S was sensitivity S of S into R of S minus N of S minus D of S. And finally, our control signal, control input U of S. This was U, this was E, and this was C or Y. Y of S. E of S, this is R of S, this is the output Y of S. And the control signal to the plant, the control signal to the plant was K into S of S into R of S minus N of S minus D of S. Okay. We also saw that sensitivity plus complement sensitivity must be always equal to 1. Okay. So if S is high, T has to be small, or both cannot be high or small at the same time. Okay. So either if S is small, T has to be high, or vice versa. Right. So for a small tracking error, suppose our disturbance and the noise was 0. Then for tracking error to be small, for small tracking error, what is the condition? Condition is that for small tracking error, if N of S and D of S is equal to 0, then our error signal will be what? Sensitivity into R of S. Okay, but R of S is the commanded input, command signal input. Okay, so to minimize the error, then sensitivity has to be small. And saying sensitivity should be small has no meaning. It means that the maximum singular value of the sensitivity function must be less than 1 for all frequencies. Or in other words, how can we express this in H infinity term? What is H infinity? Eh? What is H infinity? We already defined the infinity norm. What is H infinity? Supremum of omega sigma bar. Is it not the maximum singular value over all frequencies? That is the infinity norm, H infinity norm. Okay. So you can say that the infinity norm of the sensitivity function must be small. Okay. Then suppose we want to minimize the effect of disturbance on the output signal. Then what will be the condition for good disturbance rejection? For good disturbance rejection. So in this case, for small tracking error, sensitivity should be small, means what? Complement sensitivity will be larger. Because at a given time, both sensitivity and complement sensitivity cannot be small or large. Okay. If S is small, T has to be large. If T is large, S has to be small. Okay. So for small tracking error, sensitivity must be small, which implies complement sensitivity will be large. Okay. Similarly, for good disturbance rejection from the output signal. Okay, what's the condition? Again, sensitivity must be small, or T must be large. T must be large. Are you following what I'm saying? Because this sensitivity and complement sensitivity are related through this expression. Sum of sensitivity and complement sensitivity must be equal to 1. Okay, so here we need a smaller sensitivity function for good tracking. Okay, so since sensitivity must be small, naturally the complement sensitivity will be large. Similarly, for good disturbance rejection means what? There should be the output should not be affected by the disturbance signal. Okay, so for good disturbance rejection, S must be small, which means again T has to be large. Okay, then how can we minimize the effect of sensor noise on the output? To minimize sensor noise, or for noise minimization. What should be the condition? T of S must be small. Okay, but T of S must be small means what? S has to be large. Okay, it's a conflict-free requirement, right? So for good noise minimization, say the complement sensitivity must be small. Okay, so disturbance are low frequency signals. Okay, and noises are high frequency signals, right? So ideally, for a good sensitivity, complementary sensitivity, it has the shape of a low pass filter like this. Okay, so you see what happens here. Noise happens in high frequency region, so they will get attenuated. Okay, so this region is better for noise rejection. Noise rejection. Okay, and see for good tracking, what's the condition? What do you mean by tracking? Output should follow faithfully the input signal. Okay, so in this region is ideal for reference tracking. Reference tracking. So this will be the preferred shape of a complementary sensitivity function, T of S. Keep in mind everything, this is expressed in decibel scale. Okay. Now for sensitivity function, how should be the characteristic? It must be that of a high pass filter. What's the characteristic of an ideal high pass filter? It is something like this, ideal case. Okay. So practically we'll have something like this. Okay, so in this region, what happens? The disturbance get rejected. Why? Because disturbance means low frequency signals. So since this slope is high, ideally speaking, slope should have been infinite. Okay, ideally speaking, but practically it can you will have some value of slope. So this region is good for disturbance rejection. Disturbance rejection. Okay, so the more the slope in the low frequency region, the better the disturbance rejection will be. The higher the slope in the high frequency region, the better the noise will be rejected. Okay, so this is the sensitivity function plot versus omega. Okay. So next we will take up perturbations, unstructured perturbations. So we are seeing that mostly there are two kinds of perturbations or uncertainties. What are they? Structured and unstructured. Structured and unstructured. Okay, in structured uncertainty, we know the structure of the uncertainty. That means, say, for example, you have a mass spring damper. This is mass spring and damper B. The force is being applied. Okay, so you know, say you should be knowing what should be how the spring K can vary. Some range must be known. Okay, so that means you know the structure of the uncertainty here, right? But in unstructured case, we do not know about the structure of the uncertainty. We know that there is some uncertainty in that, but we do not know what's the structure of that. Okay, the only thing that we know about this unstructured uncertainty is that it is bounded. Okay, its infinity norm is bounded. It must be less than 1. Less or equal to 1. Okay, we only know the bound, but we do not know what is the nature of the structure of the uncertainty. Whether the uncertainty is there in K or B or M, that we do not know. So this unstructured uncertainty is most of the times present in most of the model, and that arises because of linearization process. Say, how do you linearize a system? About an operating point. We consider a Taylor series. We linearize that about the operating point. We will first consider the first few terms only. All higher order terms are ignored or neglected. Okay, so we do not know what is the nature of the structure of the neglected terms, but we know that there is some uncertainty. Okay, so this is the condition. This is the only information that we have about an unstructured uncertainty. Its infinity norm is less than 1. Okay. Now there are many kinds of representation of unstructured uncertainty. So let G P of S denote the actual perturbed plant. Actual perturbed plant. Okay, and G naught of S denote the nominal plant. So first case is additive perturbation. Additive perturbation. Okay. So in here, what happens? It is, system is like this. You have the nominal plant, G naught of S, right? And the perturbation appears as an additive part, like this. This is your uncertainty, delta of S. Plus, plus. Okay. So this is your perturbed plant, this total thing. Is your perturbed plant, GP of S. Okay. So what can I write GP of S as? How can I write that? What will be GP of S here? G naught of S plus delta of S. Is it not? The perturbed plant, the total perturbed plant will be what? G naught of S plus delta of S. Okay. G naught of S plus delta of S. This is what is called additive perturbation. Perturbations appear as additive factors. Then we have inverse additive perturbation. Inverse additive perturbation. So this is the nominal plant, G naught of S. Okay, so now it appears as inverse thing. This is delta of S. The entire thing will give us our perturbed plant, GP of S. So what will be my GP of S here? Tell me. Come on, tell me, what is GP of S?
G naught by 1 plus
G naught by
G naught by 1 plus delta S into
G naught divided by 1 plus G naught delta. Okay. So what will be inverse of this thing? GP of S inverse. How can you find that? What will be that? It will be 1 plus G naught into delta divided by G naught. Okay. So that means what? I can split this 1 by G naught plus delta. Or this can be written as G naught inverse plus delta. Okay. So here the perturbation is added inversely. Okay. Here it was simply added. It was just added at the summing point. But here it is inversely added to the plant. Perturbation is added to the inverse of the plant rather. G naught inverse plus delta. Okay. That's why it is called inverse additive perturbation. Then the next category is what is called input multiplicative perturbation. Input multiplicative perturbation. That means the perturbation will appear as a multiplicative factor. Say for example like this. This is G naught. Okay. And here is our perturbation block, delta. Plus, plus. And the entire thing is our perturbed plant. GP of S. So what will be GP of S here? What will be GP of S? What is this? What is that simplification of this much part?
G naught into 1 plus delta.
What is this thing? What is this much part simplification?
1 plus delta.
1 plus delta. Okay, if it's a MIMO case, then instead of 1 we have I plus delta. Okay, so if it's a MIMO case, I can write this as I plus delta of S. What is I? What is I?
Identity matrix.
Identity matrix. Okay, so I can write this as I plus delta of S into G naught of S. So here the perturbation appears as a multiplicative factor at the input side of the plant. That's why it is called the input multiplicative perturbation. If this appears in the output side, you call it as output multiplicative perturbation. Okay. Output, next one. Output multiplicative perturbation. So in this case, the plant appears at the input side, and at the output of the plant, we have this perturbation. So what will be GP of S here? It becomes what? What will be this?
G naught into I plus delta.
I plus delta of S. Okay. Then it can appear again as inverse input multiplicative perturbation. Okay, these are the different kinds of perturbations. And in literature, additive and multiplicative are the most exploited ones because the other things are a bit tedious and complicated. Okay, but for information, you should know this thing: inverse input multiplicative perturbation. So this material I have picked up from the book GOO. Okay, you can search a book called Robust Control Design. Robust control design or something with MATLAB. Okay, robust control with MATLAB, something like that. Chapter 1. Okay, robust control with MATLAB. Huh? You just search in the net, you will find it. GOO, Constantino, some blah blah blah. Some names are there. GU. That's the first author name. Input multiplicative perturbation. So this is the summing point. Here is our plant. And here is our perturbation, delta. GP. So what will be GP from this? What is this simplification? What is this simplification?
I upon I plus delta into G.
1 upon 1 plus delta. Okay, so if it's a MIMO case, it becomes I. So I upon I plus delta. 1 upon I plus delta, you can say. Okay, delta is MIMO thing. Okay, so that into G naught of S you will get. Okay, so I can write this as G naught into 1 by I plus delta. So what will be the inverse of this? GP inverse. What will you get? I plus delta. Into what?
G inverse of
G naught inverse. Okay, so this is the representation. GPS inverse will be I plus delta of S into G naught of S inverse. Okay, and then we have inverse output multiplicative perturbation. Inverse output multiplicative perturbation. So that appears at the output side of the plant. So here we have G naught, then here's the summing point. Here is our delta. Okay, plus minus. So this will be our perturbed plant, GP. Straight away I will write. You can try it later. Okay, straight away I'm writing GP of S inverse will be G naught of S inverse into I plus delta of S. Okay, I plus delta of S. So these are the main categories of unstructured uncertain representation. Okay. So now let us move to the next topic: linear fractional transformations. So once you have a plant with you, okay, once you have a plant, there will be perturbation in that. So we have to separate out the perturbations and the plant. Okay, that's the basic idea of LFT. So we have to represent a given system in LFT form. You take any paper on robust control, the first thing is what you will be seeing is LFT representation. Okay, that's what we are going to see now. So here, this is my nominal plant. This is the nominal plant, P0, P11, P12, P21, P22. Okay, this is my perturbation block, delta of S. Okay, and here is my controller, K of S. Right? So there will be a path from the plant to the delta. They are connected. Okay. What we are doing basically, we are separating out, we are pulling out the perturbation, the uncertainty from the plant and representing it as a separate block for analysis purpose. Okay. For analysis purpose, we are pulling out the delta from the plant. Okay. So now we have the nominal plant P0. We have delta as two separate blocks, right? And of course, we are designing a controller for such a plant. So this is the plant output Y. I call this as U. This is W, exogenous input, and this is Z. Okay. So this is the perturbation block. So what's the idea behind this kind of representation? This is the nominal plant. And here we have our controller. Okay. So this W of T is called exogenous input. Exogenous input. Okay. What is W of T? Exogenous input. That means signals coming to the nominal plant. Okay. What if you remember the block diagram? What were the exogenous input signals here? What are the exogenous input signals? External signals R of S, the disturbance D, and the noise N. Okay. So now instead of taking separately, we are clubbing it as a one category called W. Okay. So W represents the exogenous input. The bar represents that W is a vector of signals. Okay, signal vector. Right. This U of T is called, what is U of T? That is called the controller input. Did I make a mistake here? 1 minute. Control input, correct. Control input to the plant. Yes. U of T is called the control input. Control input. Okay. If you keep in mind, U, that was the control input. That is the plant input. Okay. Then this Y of T is called the measured output. Measured output. We have some sensor to measure the output and feed it back. Okay, so this Y of T is called the measured output. And this signal Z that goes from the plant to the perturbation, that is called regulated output. Regulated output. Regulated output. Is this figure clear? Yes. Yes.
Was U control input, sir? It's coming out from outside the controller.
But I think in the book it is defined like that. Just a moment. Let me see whether I made a mistake or not. Just a moment. Use the control input, right? No. See, what is the input to the controller? It is the error signal only. Is it not? You consider the common this thing. Here you have controller K. Here you have the plant G. This is the feedback. Correct. So this suppose it's a feedback signal B. So this is the error signal. So the input to the control is the error signal, and the control will generate the control signal. And that control signal will be the plant input.
Okay,
is it not?
Okay.
Is it not? Input to the control is always the error signal on which the controller will act, and it will generate a control signal which will drive the plant. Okay.
Yes, sir. Got it.
So U is the control signal which is given as the plant input. Who was the one that asked?
So Srinivasan, sir.
Srinivasan, is that clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got it, sir. Thank you.
So it is correct, I think, right? Measured output, regulated output. Right. So what did we do now? We are trying to represent the perturbation and the plant as separate blocks from the nominal plant model P. Okay. So tell me what will be my Z by W? Do you have any idea what is Z by W called? What does that represent? Okay, we'll see that later, right? So here I can write this as right in this way. What are the input signals here? There are two input signals. Which are they? W, the exogenous input, and what?
Controller input.
U, the control input. Okay, these are the two input signals. What are the two output signals here? The regulated output Z of t, Z, and the measured output Y. Okay, so I can write in matrix form like this: Z and Y. Okay, as P11, P12, P21, P22 into W, U. Can I write like this? Can I write like this?
Yes.
Because you see, these are the inputs. W and U are the inputs, and Z and Y are the outputs, right? And they are linked with the plan, the nominal plan, which is given in matrix form: P11, P12, P21, P22. Okay, so straight away I can write like this: my Z of S as P11 into W of S. All these are functions of S only. Okay, even if I miss an S, you please keep that in mind. Okay, P12 U of S. And what will be my Y of S? Y of S will be P21 W of S plus P22 U of S. Okay, so this is set of equation 1. What is state space representation? X dot equals AX plus BU. Y equals CX plus DU. Okay, so here we had considered only one input, but how many inputs do we have here? Here we have two inputs. Okay, so in general, in state space form, what is X dot T? X dot T will be, for this case, X dot T will be what? A into X of T as usual. Okay, A into X of T plus, how many inputs do we have here? Two inputs, W and U. Okay, but here our U was only one group. So you had only B term. So here we have to split B into two. One will be B1 corresponding to the first input, W of T, and then B2 corresponding to U of T. Okay, why it is different from this general expression? Because in this case, there is only one group of input signals, which is denoted by U. So we had only matrix B. But in here, we have two group of input signals. One is W and one is U. So I can split this B into two parts, B1, B2. Okay, now Z of T is also a kind of output, regulated output. So I can write this as Z of T equal to, what's the output? C into X. So C into C. So see, there are two outputs, Z and Y. So I should write C1 X of T plus D11 W of T plus D12 U of T. Okay, and what's the last output? It is Y of T. So what will be my Y of T? C2 X of T plus D21 W of T plus D22 U of T. Okay, so suppose this was a MIMO case, that is CISO case, one input, one output. Then straight away you would have got CX plus DU. Okay, but here there are two group of inputs, W and U, and two group of outputs, Z and Y. So the state space form AX plus BU, Y equals CX plus DU will become AX plus B1 W of T plus B2 U of T. And Z of T and Y of T are the corresponding outputs. C1 X of T plus D11 W T plus D12 U of T. Y of T equal to shoo. Okay. So this is equation set 2. Okay. Now, if U is equal to 0, suppose the control input was 0, what would have been this set of equations 2? What would 2 give you? U is 0. What would have been 2? Tell me. If U is 0, you will get X dot equal to what? AX plus B1W. AX plus B1W. And Z would have been what? C1X plus D11W. And what would have been Y? C2X plus D21 W. Okay. So you can find out the corresponding transfer functions between Z and W, Z and U, Y and W, and Y and U. Okay. So what will be P11 that corresponds to transfer function between Z and W? Is it not? P11 corresponds to transfer function between Z and W. Right? So what will be P11? How can we find P11 from this? Speak out, please. How can we find out P11 from this? If you know x dot equal to ax plus bu and y equals cx plus du, how will you find the transfer function g? How will you find that? Y by u. How will you? What will be that?
C times Si minus A.
C into Si minus A inverse B plus D. Okay. So similarly here we know these things. So what will be our P11? What will be our P11? What is P11? It is a transformation between Z and W. What is P12? Transformation between Z and W. What is P21? Transformation between Y and W. And P22 is a transformation between Y and U. So P11 means Z divided by W. Okay. So you have to eliminate other things. So how can you find that? Just find and let me know. How will you do? How will you do that?
So Laplace.
Laplace. Take the Laplace and just substitution. Tell me what will you get? What are you getting? You have to eliminate x and other independent variables y. Okay. You have to find relationship between Z and W. So what will you get?
So C into S.
C, no, not C. C1.
C1, okay.
C1 into what?
Si minus A the whole.
Si minus A inverse. Correct. Si minus A inverse. What?
B1 plus
B1
plus D11.
plus D11. Correct. Can you explain, Renu, how you got that?
So just taking the Laplace of the first equation, then substituting in the second equation.
That's it. That's it. Is that clear to all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes.
Can you explain it, sir?
See, it is similar to obtaining transformation on the standard case. We have the standard Laplace transform, the standard state space form. X dot equal to x plus bu, y equals cx plus du. Okay. How will you find the transformation from this? You take the Laplace transform. S into x of s, assuming zero initial conditions. What will you get? S into x of s equals A into x of s plus b into u of s. Agreed?
Yes, sir.
What's your name?
Srinivas.
Srinivas. Okay. Please tell me your name before you ask something. Okay, because I'm not seeing your face or I don't know who you are. So you take Srinivas and take x of s term to the left side. So I will get Si minus A into x of s equals b u of s. Okay, Srinivas. So what will be x of s? Si minus A inverse. Why Si minus A inverse? Because it's a matrix into b u of s. Okay. Then we take Laplace transform of y. What will you get? Y of s equals c into x of s plus d into u of s. Just substitute for x of s here. What will you get? C into Si minus A inverse b plus d whole into what? Into u of s. So what will be the transfer function? Y of s by u of s. It will be c into c into what? Si minus A inverse b plus d. Okay. So in this case, this is a MIMO system because there are two groups of inputs, W and U, and there are two groups of outputs, Z and Y. Okay. So you can find transfer function between Z and W, Y and W, then U and Z, and U and Y. Okay. So P11 represents the transfer function between Z and W. Okay. So since we are assuming, you see, these are all linear systems. Linear system means it should satisfy superposition principle. So since there are two inputs, U and W, first we assume U is equal to 0. We are applying superposition principle. Okay. So if U is equal to 0, now you have only one input, W. And we have to find the transfer function between Z and W. So what you have to do, take the Laplace transform and solve these three equations. Back substitute. Okay, Srinivas?
Okay, sir. Okay.
Just try, okay? Don't leave it. Okay, you should try. Huh? If you have any doubt, you can get back to me. So
Yes.
our P11 will be this thing, right? So, and what is Z by W? Z is the input to the perturbation block and W is the output from perturbation block. So this Z by W represents what? That represents the transfer function of the perturbation. Okay, Z is the signal coming from the plant and it goes to the perturbation block. Clearly, you should understand, right? Our plant has two outputs. One output goes to the sensor or the controller. Fine. One output goes to the controller part. The second output goes to the perturbation block, right? And the output of the perturbation is coming as another input, additional input to the plant, to the nominal plant, right? So when you take the ratio between Z and W, you will get the transfer function for the perturbation. Am I clear to all?
Sir, sir, Z is the input to that perturbation block, right? Sir?
Yes, yes. Z is the output of the plant which goes to the input to the perturbation block. Yes.
So we should take inverse to find out the transfer.
See, always, as I said before, always we need not know the structure of the perturbation. Okay. So you know what is the disturbance coming to the plant. Suppose W is a disturbance. Okay. Suppose W is a disturbance coming to the plant. And this is the output going to the perturbation block. So you may not be knowing always the delta. We are assuming that you are separating the delta separately from the plant. Okay, you will be having only the disturbance signals.
Okay.
Okay, so from the disturbance signal and from the affected output, you are modeling the perturbation. You are modeling it.
Okay, sir.
Okay, it is not the usual way of taking output by input transfer function. Here we are modeling the perturbation block. Okay, perturbation we do not know. How do we know whether perturbation exists or not? That is from the signals only. You may have some noise signal or you may have some disturbance. Okay, so from the output you know it is corrupted. Okay, so we are trying to model the perturbation block. So the plant output can be thought of as of two parts. One is going to the controller. Okay, and one is going to a perturbation block. Similarly, since the plant is affected by perturbation, there has to be an input signal from the perturbation block. That is what is W, the exogenous input. Okay, and there's another input to the plant coming from the controller, U. Right? So this the ratio of Z to W will give you the perturbation block transfer function. Are you following me or not?
Yes, sir.
What about others?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we'll stop here for that and continue the next class. So is this much modeling part clear? Because this is the first basic step. Whatever system we are going to analyze, we have to first represent it in this form. Okay, it should be clear. So we'll continue the next class.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you.
Sir,
Yes.
for basics of
Who is this?
Sir, Srinivasan asking, sir.
Yes, Srinivas.
Sir, for basics of MIMO system, where do I refer? Because
Actually, there is no single book. Actually, maybe you can. There is a book by Skodstedt just a moment. Yeah, Skodstedt. Okay, you can refer to this book. Skodstedt, postulate weight, postulate weight. Some multivariable something is there. You just search in the net, you will get the book. Multivariable feedback control.
Okay, sir.
This is the book name. You will not get all material in one single book. You will have to refer to many books actually.
Yes, sir.
Skodstedt. Okay, Skodstedt. Skodstedt, postulate weight. So we'll continue the next class. Stop here.
Thank you, sir.